Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Universal Analytics Dilemma, What to Do. Today's session is approximately 45 minutes and is being recorded for future on-demand viewing. You may submit any questions or comments in the Q&A pod. Any questions that are not responded to during the session will be answered offline in a follow-up email. And now I would like to introduce and present today's featured presenter and host, Eric Matisoff. Go ahead, please, Eric.
Great. Thank you so much, Sally. And hello, everyone. My name is Eric Matisoff. I'm a principal evangelist here at Adobe, focused on, well, analytics and all of our analytics related products. And I'm really excited to have joined with me Joe Christopher from the Blast team. So, Joe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for us, please?
Yeah, hey everyone. So I'm Joe Christopher, VP of Analytics at Blast, and I lead a team of just talented analytical experts responsible for helping clients understand and take action on data, which in turn helps to evolve their organizations. I've been at Blast for 15 years and in this industry for about that time, and just experience across multiple analytics tools and technologies and helping organizations increase their analytical maturity. So pleased to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Glad to have you. So we've got a really action-packed 45 minutes for you, so we're going to get moving as fast as we can. As you're probably well aware, there's been some crazy shakeups within the industry over the past month, past couple of months, past year plus, and we thought that it could be helpful to try to share as many facts and opinions as we can about everything there is to consider with the changes that have been going on with the updates on the analytics side from Adobe and from Google. And so the way that we've designed this session is we have 10 topics, and they range the gamut from just simply the facts of what's ending and what's changing to omnichannel analytics, to identity, to data governance and data activation and everything in between. To keep us honest, to make sure that we hit all 10 of those topics, we actually have a countdown. So we've got just 4 minutes per topic, and we are going to be going like as fast as the Micro Machines commercials back in the 90s and 80s, which I think maybe Joe and I will be some of the few that actually get that joke. So without further ado, let me actually kind of let us get started. And so the very first topic that we have are based on the facts associated with the Universal Analytics sunset. And Joe, so why don't you kind of walk us through some of the details there, and I'll kick off the timer.
Sounds great. All right, 4 minutes, here we go. So some facts about Universal Analytics sunset. So Google announced a little over a month ago their plans to sunset Universal Analytics and encourage its users to move over to Google Analytics 4. We'll also use the term GA4 throughout today's conversation. The standard Universal Analytics properties will stop processing new hits on July 1st, 2023 next year. GA360 properties, the paid version of Google Analytics, will get a few more months, and new hit processing will be ending on October 1st, 2023. Google stated that after these dates, you'll have access to previously processed data for about 6 months, or at least 6 months is the wording. And they're urging clients to move over to GA4 and start building up historical data as soon as possible so that they're ready ahead of the sunsetting event. GA4 has been in development for several years now, which is important to note. From a historical data perspective, you have really about 3 methods to save your historical data. If you're fortunate enough to have the paid version of GA360, make sure today that you have Google BigQuery linked up with GA360. If you do that, you have up to, as soon as you link it, up to 13 months of historical clickstream data that's going to be stored in BigQuery. Now that's going to allow you to do future analysis off of that raw data, that clickstream data, but keep in mind that it is in a database, right? And so you're going to have to know SQL to be able to work with that data and make use of it, but you have all of the underlying data. The second method is through the GA reporting API. And so you can use that to get the data you care about, but be aware that there is no export all data option. You have to build specific API queries, and that's technical as well, right? You work with an API and you might hit sampling limits and might have to chunk up your data into smaller chunks to get all of it. And then the last option is to go into the Universal Analytics user interface and from the reporting interface itself and select options such as exporting out to CSV and things like that. So much like the reporting API option, be careful about sampling and also data completeness. And in this method, you're simply saving what is shown in the UI, and you don't have the underlying data to do like segmentation and things like that. So those are the three core options for like historical data considerations with Universal Analytics. If you already use a product like Tableau or Data Studio for reporting or data visualizations, be aware that these tools, they often use the reporting API. And so if Google turns that off, those reports are going to stop working. So that's why it's important to capture that historical data somewhere. And let's be clear that historical data, it's important. And at the same time, many organizations, they're primarily going to be focused on year-over-year comparisons rather than like multi-year analysis. And so you definitely want, at minimum, your daily conversions broken down by marketing channels, things like that. With this consideration of the sunset of July 1st, you're going to want to achieve 13 months of historical data when you do switch over and get things, reset up there. There's some other migration considerations, and be aware. One of the most important things I want to stress today is that GA4 is a new product. It's not an upgrade from Universal Analytics. This is a new product, and so I advise my clients to approach it as such, and rather than like a lift and shift, you need to think about the strategy of how to implement GA4.
All right. Great timing, Joe. Right on the dot. Cool. Well, thank you for that walkthrough. I thought it would be helpful to conversely kind of talk about some of the updates that have been coming from the Adobe side over the last, probably actually over the last 2 years. So I want to talk a little bit about customer journey analytics and our experience data model, which we like to call customer journey analytics of CJA and experience data model of XDM. So let me actually kind of get started. So if you haven't heard anyone from Adobe talk about customer journey analytics or Adobe Experience Platform before, then you probably haven't joined a webinar or a conference of ours in quite some time. But I'm happy to kind of give you some updates. So the first thing that I want to point out is that Adobe Analytics is still here, not going anywhere for a very, very, very long time. We have a vast majority of customers that are sending all of their data from web and mobile app, digital channels into Adobe Analytics. For now on, just to like help with the separation between the two, I'll call Adobe Analytics the core Adobe Analytics product, and then Customer Journey Analytics, CJA. Now with CJA, basically what we've done is we've rebuilt and re-architected everything behind the scenes for the user, in that we have a completely new uber powerful engine that is merging data from an omni-channel perspective, which means that using what we call Adobe Experience Platform to ingest data from not just digital data sources, but data sources like CRM and loyalty and point of sale, and really anywhere that you have data, call center, etc. You can ingest that data, and using customer journey analytics, if you have an identity, which we'll get into shortly, in order to stitch those data sets together, you can then visualize them in our analysis workspace UI that you have known to grow and love over the past several years. And the difference is you've got that uber powerful engine behind the scenes that is making all of that possible. Now, there's a couple of really cool things that come from that. First of all, since both core Adobe Analytics and Customer Journey Analytics utilize the same UI of Analysis Workspace, you'll see a bunch of new features that come to both. In fact, I think it was just last month that we released the annotations feature that went both to core Adobe Analytics as well as Customer Journey Analytics. However, some features require that uber powerful re-architected, well, architecture in order to make them work. And so for those, oftentimes, if it is like a back-end underlying data thing, then that will be a customer journey analytics only feature. Well, you'll start to kind of see that as we get into some more details around what's possible in each of the different products, and you can find all sorts of great documentation there. The last thing to talk about that I have up on the screen here is XDM, which is short for Experience Data Model. Think of XDM as really like the metadata that explains and helps support all of the different applications that we've built on top of the Experience Platform to be able to talk to each other. So no longer do we have to say, okay, EVAR1 means whether or not someone is logged in, EVAR2 means their marketing channel, and then have to translate that when we're looking into that same data using Target for segmentation or something like that. Instead, it would be there's a nice friendly schema of like the user login status, for example, for EVAR1 instead. And then marketing.channel would be the marketing channel. And then you can play and interact with those. And of course, XDM is extensible as well. So you could expand it by adding additional information that you have there as well. So that's probably the fastest anyone has ever explained CJA Experience Platform in XDM. And let's get on to our next topic. So Joe, do you want to kick us through this next one?
Absolutely. Yeah, these 4 minutes are flying by. So our next topic is identity and privacy. And so with GDPR, CCPA, and many other privacy laws across the world, the landscape of how data is collected, processed, and used has been changing. And so we now have a world of consent management platforms that provide choice to users about which data is collected. And combined with these changes, you have browsers quickly adjusting to increase privacy as well. So in the browser privacy landscape, you have Safari's ITP, Chrome's impending removal of third-party cookies, and this has forced brands to adapt and shift approaches towards an increase in first-party data collection, which we'll also talk about later. I want to kick things off on this, talk about a little bit about GA4, and that GA4 is today still based really on a first-party cookie, but there's some additional interesting things about the shift from Universal Analytics to GA4. Namely that there's more of an emphasis on Google Signals, which Google Signals is a feature where Google leverages information from users that are signed in to Google account and have consented to like ads personalization. So this information is leveraged to provide that aggregated, anonymized insights into cross-device behaviors, and that's really core to GA4 in terms of how user identity is really achieved. Per se. There's also last week, Google announced some additional privacy controls around how they're approaching things from an EU perspective, specifically that they're doing like some geo lookups on IP and then processing the data on EU servers. And that was an announcement last week that we saw come through. The other thing I'll add, and then I'll turn it over to you, Eric, to comment on. But the other thing that changed in GA4, which is a great improvement, is like this surgical data deletion capability. So PII, when it does occur, you can't have that in Google Analytics. It's against the terms of service. In Universal Analytics, you had to delete all data for that date range, not just the PII. In GA4, they added some better like surgical deletion capabilities. So a lot of cool things there that enable this like cross-platform, cross-device solution on Google Analytics.
Great, yeah. Very similarly on the Adobe side of things, you've got your basics for where by default customers and visitors are going to be setting first-party cookies in order to kind of get that cross-channel and cross-device view. We look for a more durable identifier. So a hashed email or a hashed login ID, a CRM ID, a phone number, those types of items where we have the opportunity to connect the data from your CRM system to the data from your call center to the data from your web to mobile, et cetera, and then stitch that historical data as those different events and those different personas log in and can have that behavior connected so that you can deliver that analysis that you're able to do. We don't over at Adobe own one of the largest browser shares on the internet, so we don't have a comparison for Google Signals. We definitely do have a data repair API for analytics, as well as GDPR support that ensures that not only is your data deleted from the analytics platform, but from across every single application within Experience Cloud. Now, Joe, actually, we've got just a few seconds here, so maybe we'll go quickly, but we kind of noted this question of, with this push for a durable first-party identifier, what is the plan for industries and businesses that have a majority anonymous logged out visitors? Now, we don't really have time to answer that, but the short answer is that we've been able to utilize products like Customer Journey Analytics to filter and focus on anonymous visitors, and then also focus in on those that have been linked together through those durable identities and building those kinds of segments and filters on the fly. All right, so we went a little long there, so we'll move it along even faster now. So next up, we have, quite naturally, we want to talk a little bit about omnichannel analysis. And so when it comes to omnichannel analysis, we kind of take that thinking around identity, around privacy, around all these different data sets that you have, and trying to find opportunities to connect them. And so, as I just mentioned, identity is probably one of the most important pieces of that ability to link them together. Now, we see some customers that have 50% of their visitors that have logged in, some with 80 or 90%, depending on the industry, and some as low as 5 or 10%. It's like all over the gamut is what we've seen. And so what we've found it to be really important is, number one, wherever you can, try to leverage or try to push your anonymous visitors to self-identity when you can. And we recognize that not every industry is sort of set up for that type of a push. And what we've been trying to recognize are opportunities for like this value handoff, where the customer gets value by signing up, whether it's information about a webinar or information about coupons. And then with that comes a more durable identity in order to perform that analysis of, hey, you know what, someone made a purchase and then had a problem. And when they picked up that problem and maybe they made a phone call to the call center, you're able to string that full set of behavior together. Now, what's interesting about that type of use case where a user is performing an action, they're purchasing, they're converting, and then they're actually making a phone call on the call center, generally, you're going to have that identity to begin with in the first place. So it makes it relatively painless for a real wide array of journey-focused analyses to already have that durable identity. Joe, I'm not sure if there's anything that you want to add to it from your side around, what some of your clients over at Blast have been up to there.
Yeah, and I also want to talk a bit about okay, how's this going to work in GA4 as well? So, notably, there's a lot of similarities between Universal Analytics and GA4 in terms of capabilities around this omni-channel analysis, and so that's often achieved through insertion of data through either the data import capabilities, or notably that has to be associated with either a client ID or the user ID. And I forgot to mention that in the previous session, or the topic around, GA4 also supports a user ID as well. You also have in the Google Analytics world tight integration with Google Marketing Platform. And so that's going to connect you to Google Ads, DV360, things like that. And then ultimately, if you have that big BigQuery clickstream data, that's another point of integration that can help you with omni-channel analysis. While that might not be in the GA interface, you do have the clickstream data that will allow you to connect it to other data sets in the organization to perform additional analysis and things like that. So increasingly, we are finding that clients really do rely on that additional integration beyond just the core digital analytics, connecting that with CRM and additional data sets within the organization to perform better and more in-depth analysis.
Yeah,
It might have saved
it's
us
an
25 seconds there.
Yeah, that sounds great, actually. Yeah, the big thing, from our side that we've been thinking about when it comes to omnichannel, when we're thinking about offline data, is that ability to historically stitch. That when we finally have a person that went from anonymous to known, that we're able to link that historical data together. All right, so next up, Joe, why don't you take us through some marketing
Yep.
attribution topics here?
Yeah, so marketing attribution, that's the capability within tools to help understand how to attribute data, typically conversions, towards specific like marketing channels as an example. And there's different static rules-based models that are commonly used, such as last click, first click, linear time decay, and more. And then beyond the static models, we saw many years ago, now with the introduction of the algorithmic data-driven attribution models to the major platforms. The data-driven attribution models are dynamic in nature since it uses machine learning on your data by looking at the converting and non-converting journeys and how the different touch points impact outcomes. So from here, the model determines touch points that are most likely to drive conversions, gives credit to these touch points or channels. And the model is evolving based on your data. It's unique to your business. And so, from a GA4 perspective, one thing to immediately call out is that there has been a switch in terms of how attribution is applied at the entire property level, and that the default is data-driven now. That's a departure from Universal Analytics last click non-direct model that you're used to seeing your data. Now it's being data-driven, and also some changes with look-back windows. Primarily, the default's about 90 days in terms of most conversion events. So from a GA4 perspective, I think those are like some of the highlights to just be aware of with those changes, especially as your data changes.
Yeah, from the Adobe side, we've had attribution for a number of years now built into the product, and there's a few things that we aim to differentiate on when it comes to being able to take advantage of those attribution capabilities. The first one is within Customer Journey Analytics and for core Adobe Analytics customers that are on our Ultimate SKU. Very similar to the GA4 world, you'll have access to an algorithmic data-driven attribution model. Now, on top of that, we also have an additional 10-ish models, I like to say, because a few of them are customizable in terms of the length of your time decay or your starter player closer settings, fun things like that. But in my mind, what I most love about the way that we've deployed what we call Attribution IQ within Analysis Workspace is that we've made it so that you can apply and change the models on basically any metric that exists within Analysis Workspace. And so what that means is since you're applying it to the metric, you're not limited to just a certain set of dimensions. You're not limited to just the marketing channel or the channel grouping. But if you want to apply to the keyword level based on your paid search data, or if you want to apply it to your internal search terms, or if you want to adjust it based on the different more granular or less granular classifications that you've applied to your marketing or advertising data, you've got that ability to do so on the fly. And that's been a big thing that I've been focused on when I'm using our Attribution IQ functionality. Is it's beyond just simply the marketing data that you can attribute conversions to, but you can find all sorts of different micro conversions along the way and attribute them to different actions and behaviors that maybe are or not necessarily aren't advertising related. And from customers, what we've seen is that they tend to prefer actually the rules-based world a little bit more than the data-driven or algorithmic, because they feel like they have a better understanding of how the attribution is being defined, rather than a little bit of a black box when it comes to a data-driven model. Okay, so next up, a big one that I like to talk about probably all day, every day is all about ad hoc analyses. And so within the Adobe world, within Adobe Analytics, Core Analytics, within Analysis Workspace, Customer Journey Analytics, within Report Builder and the Dashboards mobile app and beyond, a big focus on us, on our products, are making sure that our customers can dig into the data that they need to at as fast as they can think of it. We've been for years calling it analysis at the speed of thought, that as soon as you have a question of your data, you can drag and drop, you can right click, you can command click, you can highlight, you can trend, all within, all from your mouse. There's no SQL required. There's no need to kind of push data into another system. Instead, you've got what you need at your fingertips, whether that's just simply creating a calculated metric or building a filter or a segment on the fly. Just kind of shift click and drag on over what you need, and then you can dig into that data there. A big interesting kind of advancement that we've seen within the ad hoc analysis side of things, and beware, I'm not talking about the old product ad hoc analysis, I'm talking about ad hoc analyses, is your ability to take those types of analyses beyond just simply the browser. And Analysis Workspace is where I like to spend most of my time, but I find that customers more and more are looking to utilize Excel to pull some data out of Adobe Analytics, mix and match it with other data sets. And with Customer Journey Analytics, customers can even do that in Report Builder on a Mac, or even in the browser if you're using Excel in the Office in your browser, which is kind of cool too. Joe, how about on the Google side over there?
Yeah, on the GA4 side, the notable thing here is that there's some changes. When you're in the standard report section of GA4, this is really like report cards, if you will. And so to do ad hoc analysis, you're going to want to shift probably over to the Explore feature, and that's more front and center in GA4. Now, there are some limitations in Explore in terms of what we're seeing, and so there's some limitations that you may encounter. This would be most similar, I guess, to Adobe Workspace, but of course there's lots of differences we don't have time to cover in today. But you can do things like data tables, cohort explorations, segment comparisons, and things like that. There's also Data Studio, which connects with GA4. Now, notably currently at least, in the Data Studio GA4 connector, there's no option to have segments applied. There are filters, but not segments. So you need to be aware of that. They don't get imported in. And that's because even in the Explore section, you can save segments that you create in in that exploration, but they aren't available in additional explorers that you create. So there's just some things there that might not work as well as what you're used to with Universal Analytics. There's also, of course, BigQuery front and center for ad hoc analysis with GA4, because now you have all of the underlying data, but that, as Eric mentioned, does require a lot of technical expertise, SQL knowledge to be able to navigate that data and to perform ad hoc analysis, customer journey analysis, and things like that. So, that's certainly a big, thing that you need to rely on, I think, with GA4 and just be prepared for, is that, some of those limitations in the UI that you're going to need to fall back on in terms of working in BigQuery.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. You're much better at getting in right before the timer ends there. So kudos. All right. So next topic is all about artificial intelligence and machine learning. Joe, why don't you kind of get us started on this one?
So AI and machine learning, ML, right? It's increasingly becoming more than just a buzzword. We have commonplace machine learning models today that can surface up interesting insights based on anomalies or something occurring that was not expected based on past data. And, from these anomalies, a contribution analysis can be ran. The reports, back to you the data or the segments that contributed to the unexpected change in data. And these types of automated insights are sprinkled into the UIs of tools that we use. And, I expect that we'll see more and more of this. I personally find a lot of time that there are anomalies, that are obvious in terms of like campaign contributions and things like that. But even these are interesting to look at. An interesting part about GA4 is that they've stated that they plan to use ML to fill in data gaps as the move to a cookieless world transpires. That's not, I don't think it's in place today, but that's Google's plans for a cookieless world. We still have first party cookies though. And from a GA4 perspective, we have anomaly detection that's available in GA4 that are going to be surfaced as like insights. You can also create an alert against a specific metric that you or conversion that you care about. And instead of just like percent change, you can select, is there an anomaly, right? And so based on that, you'll receive an alert, email alert when something like that occurs. And it can also surface up, in some cases, a contribution analysis of like a segment that has contributed to that. There's also predictive audiences, and with GA4, audiences are like sort of front and center, like in everything you do, whether you're creating a segment or different analysis, you can create an audience from that. And then that audience can integrate with Google Marketing Platform products like Google Ads, remarketing, and things like that. You also have predictive metrics that are new. So purchase probability, churn probability, predicted revenue that's available. And then those predictive audiences around like 7-day purchasers, predicted 28-day top spenders, different things like that. So some new advancements in GA4 from a AI ML perspective. What about on Adobe, Eric?
So yeah, so in the Adobe world, we've got a wealth of features that are kind of similar, that are powered by machine learning and artificial intelligence. For years, we've had anomaly detection, where basically anytime you trend any metric, regardless of how it's been filtered or segmented or applied to different capabilities, we'll run that through predictive algorithms to identify any anomalies or spikes and dips within your data. Within core Adobe Analytics, you've got that contribution analysis that Joe was talking about as well, where within a click, you can see some of the root causes associated with it. Also within customer journey analytics, you've got anomaly detection. But what we've recognized is we've kind of learned from some of the limitations and some of the results coming from contribution analysis in core Adobe Analytics. So we're actually refactoring a bunch of different things associated with that before we bring that feature into CJA. Also within core Adobe Analytics, you'll see capabilities like segment comparison. Within customer journey analytics, we also have customer AI, which is a purchase or churn propensity model that can be overlaid with your data as well. Now, what I'm kind of like recognizing is that, you know, within the GA4 world, we've got the data-driven algorithmic attribution, we've got the modeled conversions and the predictive audiences, and it feels more and more like customers are kind of relying on the black box of machine learning. And whereas on the Adobe side, we want to give you the data and let you do that on your own. Okay, next up, we've got data governance. Now, from a data governance side of things, I like to think of data governance as being focused on like in 3 different ways. Number one, there's just simply data quality of, you know, do you have a data layer that you can rely on that is feeding into dimensions and metrics that you believe in and you can feel confident about. The second is around component governance. So who within your organization has access to the right segments that have been defined, the right calculated metrics that have been defined, the right metrics, the right reports, the right dimensions. So that's the component governance side of things. And then finally, there's also like feature governance, which is kind of simple concept, but you know, you don't want to give access to, you know, your C-suite to the full access to like RStudio or, you know, your data warehouse and end up having them being completely overwhelmed with the different features that they have at their fingertips. So being able to limit the access to the data and the access to those features, as well as governing control of the segments, calculated metrics, and reports that you create, and then of course data quality. And so I think, you know, from a data quality perspective, you're going to kind of hear the same thing from the Google and Adobe side. So I won't really talk about that. We've got data layers and tag managers and everything you need there. From a component governance side of things is where we've really spent a lot of time in terms of making sure that users only have access to the data that they need, which means that administrators can create and share segments. Users can create and share reports to others within the organization. And when they do that, they can give them access to edit or overwrite or save as, or just simply view. And the same goes with features. If I know that, this VP over here is always hitting contribution analysis and then like knocking on my door, or my virtual door through Zoom, and asking me questions about the results of contribution analysis, I'm just going to take that away from that VP. So that's the way I like to think about things over on the Adobe side. Joe, how about within GA4?
Yeah, so with GA4, when it comes to like the component governance that you were talking about, notably right now there are no calculated metrics in GA4. You need to do those yourself essentially and send those in. So sort of skip over that one. But from a segment perspective, there is no sharing available for segments right now. So in the Explore mode where you can create segments, those only live in that Explore, and you can share that Explore report with someone, others in the organization, but it's shared with everybody in the organization. There's not a way to just share it with, certain users and things like that. So certainly some limitations to be aware of when it comes to, this topic. Same thing goes for, the reports capability. When you're looking at that, you can't tailor just that area just for certain users and things like that. It's customized for all users as you do that. There is a new feature in GA4, which basically allows you by user to say that they can't see cost data or revenue data if that were a decision that you would want to make. You can also customize the report navigation now in GA4, but that's customized for all users that are accessing the GA4 platform. So some notable things there to be aware of. And just another comment is that like data governance in digital analytics, there's so many opportunities there. We wrote a blog post a number of years ago that has a lot of great topics on how to approach this from like a center of excellence perspective and things like that are really critical that I think brands benefit from.
Yeah, completely agreed. Yeah, we'll have to share out that blog post after the session. All right, Joe, why don't you talk a little bit about this next one? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, data democratization and sharing. So when it comes to this, there's many aspects of consideration. So as your organization grows in size, the importance of the governance that we just talked about also needs to be aligned with data democratization. It needs to be simple for your executives to receive the data at the level that they need to be communicated with. And just the same, analysts that are working together need to be able to collaborate effectively. The digital analytics data doesn't stop at the GA or Adobe Analytics interface, and there needs to be options to use that data in supporting ways throughout the organization. So from a GA4 perspective, like if we're looking at from an executive data access, Data Studio is probably going to be the way that you are going to want to communicate data from GA4. And as discussed previously, this is going to allow you the option to schedule reports, send those out, different things like that. There is no email report sharing functionality in the GA4 interface, whether in Explore or Reports. So Data Studio often becomes that, but be aware that Data Studio lacks like the segmentation capabilities. You can connect it to BigQuery and do some of those, but that's a lot more technical. The sharing, there's not really sharing capabilities in GA4 as it is right now. So not much to talk about there. And then from like getting your data out, like in Excel and things like that, for Universal Analytics, Google did have like a add-on for Google Sheets. I don't think there's one available yet for GA4, but you can also rely on third parties, Supermetrics, lots of other vendors, third-party vendors out there that already have GA4 support to get your data into Excel, Google Sheets, things like that. And there's also a mobile app that is compatible with GA4 that executives can use, but it's really just mimicking the GA4 interface, but in a mobile app. The reports view is just mimicked in that. And we've already talked about BigQuery quite a bit. So those are like some of the ways from a GA4 perspective that you should just be aware of when you're sharing data. Eric?
Great. Yeah. So within the Adobe world, what we've kind of done is we've tried to pull in all those different functionalities right into the Adobe Analytics, both core and customer journey analytics products, where, very similar, we have a mobile app, but it allows for all sorts of customization to make it perfectly tailored to the end user that is actually going to be, hey, you know what? I'm not in the office right now, but I need to be able to check in just on a few data points, and I've got the access that they need to be able to do that. Award-winning dashboards mobile app, actually. Also, I mentioned it a little bit in the previous section, but within Analysis Workspace, therefore, both CJA and Core Analytics, you have these concepts of sharing roles, where, if I start to think about how we would deliver very similar style dashboards that are limited in functionality to what you would see in Data Studio, in terms of interaction, is we have a view-only mode. So when I share a project over to a colleague that I don't want to be able to slice and dice the data with a very sharp knife, instead I can give them view-only mode, and they would be able to apply some segments and change the dates, and that's really about it. The other thing to mention is, actually, you know what? To make up some time, let's just jump into the last one. There we go. We cut one less than 4 minutes. How about that? So for our very last topic, we want to talk about data activation. And so, not surprisingly, this is a big focus across all sorts of things. The number one item on our list when it comes to Adobe Analytics, both within Core Analytics and CJA, is giving you the opportunity to take action from the segments, from the audiences that you build. Now, the way that is done today would be through our real-time customer data platform, or CDP, where you can build a filter within customer journey analytics, or build a segment within Core Adobe Analytics, and publish that as an audience in order to make that available within the real-time CDP UI. And from there, you can layer on additional data sources or additional constraints based on other data sets that perhaps are not pulled into customer journey analytics, if you like, and then activate those through any number of advertising destinations, personalization destinations, email marketing destinations, or really anything that is tied into the CDP. And the advantages that we're able to provide there are that since the CDP is built on Experience Platform, the same way that customer journey analytics is, then those, one of the very first topics that we talked about around privacy and consent is all fully respected there as well, so that the audiences that you create, they won't be sending data to places if they're using information based on fields that have been marked as, hey, you know what, you can't activate this in an advertising channel, or you can't use this for email marketing. All of that is controlled within the CDP just simply by default. If you said this can't be used here, then not only is that added as a label, but it's actually enforced within our products. And so you can send those audiences, as I mentioned, off to display, paid search, email, mobile push, paid search, all of that good stuff. Now, Joe, I have a feeling I know a little bit about the ad stack that GA4 will be sending audiences to, but I'm happy to let you explain it because you'll do a much better job than me.
Yeah. So front and center with GA4, you have audience activation, and I mentioned about that earlier, but the audience activation is essentially, think of it as like a segment that's defined that defines conditions that users belong into, and then a list of those users is able to be sent out to connected products. Now, connected products are going to be essentially like Google Marketing Platform products, DV360, Google Ads for like remarketing, things like that. So you are working within that Google ecosystem for audience activation. Now, if you want to do or leverage your data, which I do recommend for things outside of the GMP platform, whether you're using like your email marketing platform or personalization platform and so forth, although there is Google Optimize, you do need to start looking at how are you going to integrate that data, like taking advantage of the underlying clickstream data in BigQuery to connect that. And there's also real-time capabilities with that that can be quite powerful, but notably it is technical, right? You're going to have to build some of that yourself or get that data over to somewhere like a CDP that can help handle that. Those are like some of the key things from a GA4 perspective, just to be aware of on this topic of like data activation. And ultimately, like the goal of data activation is how can we improve the customer experience? That should be the focus, and working with that data in intelligent ways to make that a reality, and collecting more first party, zero party data to do that. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Joe, and thank you to all of the attendees. We really appreciate you spending 45 minutes with us going through 10 topics. It looks like it was actually 48 minutes, but we tried to go as fast as we could. And we'll have a recording sent out to you. Actually, Sally, I'm not sure if there's any kind of closing comments that you wanted to share with us before we close things out. Nope? Okay. Great. Well, thanks, everybody, and we will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.